A heavy rain hammered the ancient rooftops of the Cotswolds that night, rattling the windows and sweeping through the endless green hills with a howl. The wind bent the tall trees lining the old stone fences, sending loose branches clattering across muddy roads. The countryside was alive with the noise of the storm, but at the Greenhaven Equestrian Center, something far more sinister was brewing. Olivia pressed her forehead to her bedroom window, watching the droplets race each other down the glass. She could barely make out the silhouette of the main barn under the flickering security light. She should have been asleep. Her graduation from university was only a few weeks behind her, and the real world hadn't been gentle. Her mother was gone, her father worn down and hardened by years as a soldier, and Greenhaven felt like the last fragile link to the life she'd loved as a child. Suddenly, a wild neigh sliced through the wind. Olivia's heart leapt. That was Storm, her favorite horse, her late mother's pride. The sound was sharp, panicked. Another crash followed, louder than thunder, and the horse's frantic hooves thudded against the wooden stalls. She dashed downstairs, grabbing her coat, boots, and a flashlight. She threw open the kitchen door, barely noticing the cold rain that slapped her face. The muddy yard sucked at her boots as she sprinted toward the barn. The door stood wide open, swinging back and forth. Olivia's breath caught. Inside, chaos reigned. The powerful flashlight beam shook in her hand as she counted heads. Stalls empty, some horses missing, tack thrown about. Her father, Henry, was there too, blood streaming from a cut on his forehead. He clutched his side, gritting his teeth. "Dad!" she shouted, kneeling by him, hands trembling. "They took the horses," he groaned, wincing as he tried to stand. "Storm's gone. I tried to stop them. Damn fools!" She helped him up, heart racing. Outside, deep hoof prints and the glare of fading headlights vanished into the black night. The other horses whinnied and kicked in their stalls, their eyes rolling with fear. Olivia fought to stay calm. "Hold on, I'll get help," she said, pulling out her phone. The storm had knocked out the Wi-Fi. No signal. Panic pricked at her chest, but she remembered the old landline in the tack room. She sprinted through puddles, dialing emergency services with numb fingers. The operator's calm voice felt like a lifeline as she described the break-in, her father's injury, and the stolen horses. Within minutes, flashing blue lights appeared at the end of their gravel drive. Paramedics rushed Henry to the hospital, and Olivia stood in the downpour, numb, watching them go. She wrapped herself in a thin blanket, shivering, not just from cold, but from the loss and fear settling over her like a weight. Back in the barn, she took stock. Of the 8 horses they'd kept, 3 were gone, including Storm. Tack and gear were scattered, the security camera smashed, and muddy boot prints tracked across the aisle. The familiar smells of hay and leather were tainted with gasoline and fear. In the last stall, something caught Olivia's eye, a pair of wild, golden eyes glinting in the darkness. Blaze. The fierce, unpredictable chestnut gelding that no one but her mother had ever managed to ride. Blaze had been left behind, locked in the far stall, snorting and stamping his hooves. His coat was slick with sweat and rain, his mane tangled. He reared as she approached, teeth bared, but didn't attack. Not tonight. For a brief second, Olivia thought she saw a flicker of understanding, even defiance in his eyes, as if Blaze resented being left behind just as much as she did. She slumped on a bale of hay, burying her face in her hands, tears mixing with the rain on her cheeks. Everything felt broken. The farm, her family, her sense of safety. She thought of her mother's voice, gentle but firm. Take care of the animals, Olivia, even when it's hardest. They need you most when they're scared. She looked up at Blaze. Well, she whispered, I guess it's just you and me now. The storm raged on. Alone in the echoing barn, with the wind shrieking through broken boards and the memory of her father's blood on her hands, Olivia felt the first spark of something fierce ignite inside her. This wasn't just about the stolen horses anymore. It was about fighting for her home, for her family, for every frightened creature left in her care. In the distance, lightning split the sky, illuminating the lonely figure of Olivia and the wild, unbroken horse at her side. Somewhere in that wild night, a quest had begun. One that would test every ounce of courage she had and forge a bond between girl and horse that nothing, not even fear or thieves or the bitter English rain, could ever break. Morning came gray and cold, seeping through the battered windows of Greenhaven like an unwelcome memory. The air inside the farmhouse was heavy, thick with the silence that always follows disaster. Olivia moved from room to room, barely aware of the mess left by last night's chaos. Muddy footprints on the kitchen tiles. Her father's bloodied jacket flung across the back of a chair. The scent of rain still lingering in the hallway. Outside, the land looked battered, puddles shining in the weak dawn light, the grass torn and muddy from the intruder's boots. At the hospital, her father was resting, the doctors saying he was lucky. A broken rib, a deep cut that needed stitches, but nothing worse. Olivia wanted to stay by his side, but Henry's voice was as stern as ever, even through the haze of painkillers. The horses need you, he said, gripping her hand, the strength of his calloused fingers belying his age and injury. Greenhaven needs you. Don't let them win. So Olivia went home, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. She'd always been the girl who followed the rules, who did what she was told, but now she was all Greenhaven had left. The local police promised to investigate, but their words felt empty against the reality of 3 missing horses, a wrecked barn, and a battered family. Neighbors called to offer their sympathy, some dropping off soup or fresh bread, but behind their kind eyes, Olivia sensed doubt. Would she be able to keep the farm running? Could she protect the animals, keep the place alive, when even her father had failed to stop the thieves? In the barn, Blaze greeted her with suspicion. He paced his stall, muscles tense beneath his muddy chestnut coat, ears pinned flat. Olivia reached out a hand, letting him sniff her fingers. He snorted, turning away, but not before she caught a flash of intelligence in his gaze. Wild, unbroken, but not cruel. She knew what the others thought of Blaze. Dangerous, impossible, a mistake her mother had made out of pity. He'd been bought at auction, a last-minute rescue, a horse with more fire than sense. But Olivia saw something else. In Blaze, she saw her own fear, her own anger at the world. She saw the stubbornness that had kept her going through years of grief and disappointment. She saw maybe a last chance. By noon, the staff began to trickle in, their faces grim. Annie, the head stable hand, looked at Olivia as if expecting her to break at any moment. "We could call the insurance company," Annie said, voice low. "But you know it'll take months, if they pay out at all. And without Storm, how are we going to keep the lesson program running? That horse was half our income." Olivia pressed her lips together, refusing to let her uncertainty show. "We do what we can," she said. "We keep Greenhaven going. My father would never forgive us if we just gave up." The other workers exchanged glances. Olivia could feel their skepticism, their fear. Greenhaven wasn't just a business, it was a way of life. And now, with their leader gone, everything felt fragile. She moved through the barn, checking on each horse, murmuring quiet words of reassurance. But Blaze was the one who lingered in her mind. That afternoon, after the staff had gone, Olivia returned to Blaze's stall. She brought an apple, sliced into neat wedges the way her mother used to do. Standing just inside the door, she held out a piece, her hand steady despite the pounding of her heart. Blaze sniffed the air, one ear flicking toward her. He took a tentative step forward, then stopped, nostrils flaring. "It's just you and me, buddy," Olivia said, her voice soft. "Nobody else believes we can do this." The horse took the apple, lips brushing her palm. For a moment their eyes met, wariness on both sides, but something else too. Hope, fragile and uncertain. Olivia's mind drifted back to her mother. She remembered long summer evenings in this very barn, her mother's laughter echoing off the rafters as she brushed down tired horses. "You have to see them," her mother would say. "Not just what's on the surface, but who they are underneath. Every horse is different, just like every person. Find the good, even when it's hard." That night, Olivia stayed late researching everything she could about horse training. Her laptop glowed in the dim kitchen, tabs open to YouTube videos, equestrian forums, and articles about positive reinforcement. She scribbled notes, trying to absorb every tip and technique. The words patience, consistency, and trust appeared again and again, underlined in her mother's old training manuals. By midnight, Olivia had a plan. She would train Blaze, not just because he was the only horse left who could work, but because she believed in him. She believed, stubbornly, in herself. The next morning, Olivia began Blaze's training in earnest. She moved slowly, respecting his boundaries, offering treats and gentle praise. Blaze tossed his head, stamping the ground, but Olivia didn't flinch. Instead, she stepped back, letting him set the pace. The other staff watched from a distance, whispering doubts. "That horse is trouble," one muttered. "He'll never trust her." But Olivia kept at it. Every small victory, a nuzzle, a moment of calm, was a triumph. She remembered her mother's lessons. "Don't fight his fear, Olivia. Show him you're on his side." There were setbacks, of course. Blaze bit at the lead rope, kicked at the wall, reared up when she tried to fit the bridle. Olivia's hands shook, her arms ached, but she refused to give up. She took breaks when she needed to, walking away to clear her head, but always coming back. She started documenting their progress with her phone, recording little moments of connection to remind herself that change was possible, even if it came slowly. At night, Olivia found herself talking to her father's empty armchair, sharing the day's frustrations and triumphs as if he were listening. She told him about Blaze, about the staff's doubts, about her own fears. Sometimes she wondered if she was really strong enough. But every morning, she got up and tried again. One evening, exhausted but determined, Olivia caught her reflection in the tack room mirror. Mud on her jeans, hay in her hair, dark circles beneath her eyes. But her posture was straight, her jaw set. For the first time since the break-in, she saw not a scared girl, but a young woman ready to fight for what mattered. As the days passed, Blaze began to change. He stopped flinching when Olivia approached. He took treats from her hand, allowed her to brush his coat, even stood still while she cleaned his hooves. Each small step felt like a miracle. The community started to notice, too. Neighbors dropped by with words of encouragement. some bringing feed or supplies. A few volunteers offered to help around the barn. Slowly, hope began to flicker at Greenhaven, faint at first, but growing brighter with every sunrise. Late one night, as rain pattered against the roof, Olivia sat in Blaze's stall, arms around his neck. He didn't shy away. Instead, the great chestnut horse lowered his head, pressing his muzzle into her shoulder. "We'll bring them home," Olivia whispered, her voice fierce. "We'll get Storm back. We'll make Greenhaven whole again, I promise." And for the first time since that terrible night, Olivia truly believed it. The first rays of sunlight slipped through the old barn's wooden slats, dust swirling in the pale gold. Olivia stood alone in the aisle, hands buried deep in her jacket pockets, watching as Blaze eyed her warily from the far end of his stall. It had been days since the break-in, but the echo of that stormy night still haunted every corner of Greenhaven. Sometimes, Olivia thought she could hear Storm's frightened whinny on the wind, or see muddy boot prints reappear on the threshold, but it was always just her mind playing tricks. She took a deep breath. Today was different. Today she was done letting fear win. She moved slowly, never turning her back on Blaze, never pushing too close. The horse's muscles were coiled tight under his chestnut coat, head held high, nostrils flaring. He had always been unpredictable, but now his wildness felt like a mirror of her own desperate determination. In a way, they were both survivors, left behind, doubted, expected to fail. "Morning, Blaze," Olivia said softly, tossing him a slice of apple through the rails. He snatched it up, crunching loudly, but didn't take his eyes off her. She opened the stall door, holding herself tall but relaxed. In her pocket, she carried more slices of apple and a handful of carrot coins, rewards she'd carefully prepared the night before. Blaze's ears twitched forward, then back. He stomped a hoof, muscles bunching as if preparing to bolt. Olivia waited, heart pounding, letting him decide. "Good boy," she murmured when he didn't charge. "You're all right. We're in this together." She'd spent hours researching positive reinforcement and natural horsemanship, watching YouTube videos late into the night, poring over old training books her mother had left behind. It all came down to patience, repetition, and trust. No loud voices, no whips, no force. Olivia made every movement deliberate, every word gentle. The first days were brutal. Blaze reared when she tried to clip on the lead rope, his hooves flashing inches from her face. He snatched treats so hard he nipped her palm, leaving red welts. He whirled in circles around her, snorting and kicking, sweat darkening his flanks. Olivia's arms ached from holding her ground. Her confidence wavered every time she left the barn. But each morning she came back. The other stable hands kept their distance, watching with thinly veiled skepticism. "She'll never tame that horse," Annie whispered to another worker as they mucked out the neighboring stalls. "She's just a girl. She doesn't have her father's grit." Olivia heard them, but didn't let it show. She forced herself to smile, to thank them for their work, even as their doubts stung sharper than Blaze's teeth. After a particularly rough morning, Olivia slumped on an overturned feed bucket outside Blaze's stall, wiping sweat from her brow. Her fingers trembled as she texted her father an update. "Blaze is tough, but so am I. I won't give up." The reply came minutes later, a simple, "Proud of you, kid. Remember what your mom used to say. They need you to listen. Don't try to outstubborn a horse. Earn his trust." Those words circled in Olivia's mind as she tried again that afternoon. She didn't reach for the halter. Instead, she sat quietly in a corner of the stall, ignoring Blaze. pretending to be absorbed in her phone. She scattered a few carrot coins by her feet, acting indifferent. Blaze watched her, wary but curious. After long minutes, he sidled over, lips questing for treats. Olivia stayed silent, letting him explore. Little by little, the walls between them started to fall. The next morning, Blaze allowed her to scratch his neck, just for a second, before pulling away. That evening, he let her brush his mane, though his body stayed rigid, muscles tense. Each small victory was hard won, but Olivia treasured them. Late one afternoon, with the barn bathed in amber sunlight, Olivia decided to try something new. She set up a simple obstacle course in the arena. A line of ground poles, a blue tarp spread flat, a stack of plastic cones. Blaze eyed the setup with suspicion, snorting as she led him into the ring. She spoke to him softly, letting him sniff each obstacle, rewarding every step with a treat or a gentle stroke. Blaze hesitated at the tarp, blowing and tossing his head, but Olivia stayed calm, giving him space. After several tries, he finally placed a trembling hoof on the tarp, then crossed it in a single bound. Olivia whooped, clapping her hands. "Yes! That's it, Blaze. Good boy!" She saw for the first time a glimmer of pride in his stance. Ears forward, head high, like he finally understood what she wanted. The weeks passed, each day bringing new challenges. Blaze had bad days when he refused to cooperate, shying at shadows or kicking at the rails. Olivia had bad days too. Mornings when she woke up bone-tired, haunted by nightmares of the break-in, of Storm's terrified eyes as he was led away. Sometimes she wanted to quit, to leave Greenhaven behind and disappear into the anonymity of a city job, like so many of her friends. But every evening, as she walked Blaze out to graze in the fading light, she felt a quiet strength grow inside her. She remembered her mother's gentle hands, her father's steady voice, and the legacy of Greenhaven, a place built on hope, grit, and second chances. One rainy evening, as Olivia closed up the barn, she found herself talking aloud to Blaze, sharing her fears and dreams as if he were an old friend. "You know, they all think we can't do it. But I see something in you, Blaze. I see fight. I see heart. Maybe you're not the hero everyone expected, but neither am I." Blaze snorted, nudging her shoulder with his velvety nose. For the first time, Olivia laughed, a true, unguarded sound. That night, she sat by the kitchen window, scrolling through the security footage from the night of the theft. Most of it was ruined, the camera smashed. But as she squinted at the grainy images, a tiny detail caught her eye. A glint of metal in the thieves' hands. Something about the way they moved, almost like they knew exactly which horses to take. Olivia's mind raced with questions. Was this random, or was it targeted? She made a list in her notebook, names, times, every scrap of memory she could recall. She reached out on social media, joining groups for stolen horses, reading stories of other break-ins across the Cotswolds. The pain was everywhere, but so was community, people who cared, who fought back. Olivia wrote an update on Greenhaven's Facebook page, posting a photo of Blaze's progress. "We're still here. We're still fighting. Blaze is learning, and so am I. If anyone has information about the break-in, please reach out. We won't give up until our horses are home." The next morning, the post had dozens of comments, messages of support, offers of help, even a few tips about suspicious trucks seen in the area. For the first time, Olivia felt a surge of hope, a sense that maybe she wasn't as alone as she thought. As she led Blaze out into the misty morning, Olivia looked out over the rolling green hills and made a silent promise. She would find Storm. She would bring her family back together. She would prove to everyone and to herself that she was strong enough. Blaze, no longer wild with fear, walked beside her, head high. Together, they were ready to face whatever came next. The morning fog hung thick and heavy over Greenhaven, muffling every sound and cloaking the stables in a hush that seemed to stretch the boundaries between reality and memory. Olivia tugged her coat tighter, stepping into the barn with Blaze trailing behind her, more relaxed now than he'd been in weeks. The progress with him had been hard-earned and slow, but each day, a little more of his trust returned. Still, a part of Olivia stayed wound tight with worry for Storm, for her father's health, for the future of Greenhaven. That uncertainty gnawed at her, especially as she glanced at the empty stalls, each one a painful reminder of what had been stolen. After chores, Olivia poured herself a mug of coffee and sat at her mother's old desk, where the soft morning light crept in and illuminated boxes of faded photographs, forgotten ribbons, and a collection of keys, each one once needed for some now-forgotten purpose. She had hardly touched her breakfast. The pain of loss made it difficult to eat. She opened her laptop and checked the Greenhaven Facebook page. The new post about Blaze had gathered even more attention overnight. Dozens of shares, a handful of private messages, and comments from strangers wishing her luck. One message stood out, from a woman in a nearby village whose own horse had been taken 6 months ago. "Check for anything the thieves might have left behind," the message read. "Sometimes they use special tags or leave marks on property. Happened to us." Olivia frowned, glancing at the security footage again. It was still mostly ruined, static and flashes of shadowy movement, but something about the message bothered her. After feeding the horses, she grabbed a flashlight and headed for the old stall where Blaze had been left that night. The bedding was still disturbed, the faintest traces of hoof prints left where Blaze had paced and reared. She knelt, running her fingers through the straw and dust, pushing aside a broken piece of halter. That's when she saw it. Glinting beneath the edge of the stall wall, half buried in mud and straw, was a metal tag, a small horse's collar, the kind used at shows to identify valuable animals. She brushed off the grime, heart thudding. On the underside, someone had scratched a symbol, not the Greenhaven crest, but a crude, looping G with a line through it. Olivia's thoughts raced. She hurried back to the house, collar in hand, and started searching online. It didn't take long to stumble across posts on equestrian forums describing similar break-ins across Gloucestershire. A few victims had also found tags marked with the G symbol. One thread pointed toward rumors of a local ring stealing and reselling horses to buyers outside the country. The more Olivia read, the more a chill settled in her chest. This was no random crime. These thieves were organized. She took a photo of the collar and posted it in several Facebook groups focused on stolen animals. The replies came fast and furious. "That's the Gloucestershire ring," someone wrote. "Happened to my neighbor last year." Another message. "You should contact the local horse watch group. They've been tracking this for months." She wrote down every piece of advice, every possible contact. With new determination, Olivia logged onto her father's old laptop. He'd always been better at this technical stuff, and tried to reconstruct a timeline from their remaining security logs, receipts, and emails. She noted every suspicious visitor, every delivery truck that came by at odd hours. Patterns began to emerge. A white van seen twice the week before the theft, A delivery order that never matched the supplier's usual paperwork. A phone call in the middle of the night that had woken Henry but seemed, at the time, like a wrong number. The more she dug, the more Olivia realized that she'd have to take matters into her own hands. The police, though sympathetic, were overwhelmed. Horse theft wasn't exactly a top priority, not compared to burglaries, assaults, or the endless flood of rural disputes. The officers said they'd check in, but Olivia knew it could be weeks before anything real happened, if ever. She found herself thinking of her mother, the way she'd always taken on challenges herself, never waiting for someone else to fix things. "We do what we can with what we have," her mother used to say, brushing a strand of hair behind Olivia's ear. In the barn that evening, Olivia confided in Blaze as she mucked out his stall. "I know you probably don't care about detective work," she said, tossing straw, "but I think we've got a real lead. We just need to be brave, you and me." Blaze snorted, flicking his tail, as if to say he was up for anything. Determined, Olivia mapped out the farms in the Cotswolds that had been hit by the same gang. It formed a rough circle, and in the center of that ring was a dense patch of woodland and several abandoned outbuildings, the kind people drove past for years and never noticed. She pulled up Google Maps, searching for likely hiding spots. One, an old dairy barn outside the town of Northleach, caught her eye. It was close enough for a quick run with a trailer, but remote enough for criminals to hide animals for days without anyone noticing. She joined a local group on Facebook dedicated to missing animals and reached out to its administrator, a wiry, middle-aged man named Arthur, who responded almost immediately. "I can show you the best back roads," he messaged. "Just say the word. The police haven't found anything, but I've got some cameras set up in the woods." The next day, Olivia borrowed a friend's drone, a lightweight quadcopter with a decent camera, and set out after chores. Blaze watched her assemble the parts, curiosity bright in his eyes. She snapped on her helmet, clipped the drone's controller to her phone, and took off along the rutted, winding road toward Northleach. The drive was tense, Olivia's hands gripping the steering wheel as she replayed every detail of the night her world had changed. She found the turnoff for the old dairy barn, hidden beneath a drooping willow tree, and parked far enough away to avoid notice. There, shielded by hedges, she launched the drone, its buzzing wings slicing through the hush. The video feed showed the barn's collapsed roof, the tangled grass, and the muddy tracks of recent vehicles. Olivia guided the drone lower, peering through broken windows and gaps in the doors. At first, it looked empty, just the hollow shell of a forgotten building. But then, as she zoomed in, something caught her eye. A flash of movement, the outline of a horse, a glimmer of white against the darkness. She steadied her hands. Heart pounding, there were more, at least 3 huddled together in the shadows. She quickly saved the footage and texted Arthur, who confirmed the location matched his own suspicions. "I'll notify the others. Don't go in alone," he warned, but Olivia knew she couldn't wait. The longer storm and the others were gone, the greater the chance they'd be moved again, maybe even out of the country. She spent the evening drafting a plan, using Google Maps to chart every possible approach, every escape route. She packed a backpack with essentials, a flashlight, extra batteries, a pair of heavy-duty wire cutters, and her phone set to emergency dial. After midnight, sleep would not come. Olivia sat in the tack room with Blaze, stroking his mane as he leaned against her. "We're getting closer, Blaze," she whispered, more to herself than to him. "We just have to be careful and brave. I wish Mom were here." The horse stood with her until dawn crept over the hills, and Olivia knew, come what may, she would see this through. For Storm, for Greenhaven, and for every frightened animal whose future hung in the balance. The dawn broke pale and uncertain over the rolling hills of the Cotswolds, casting misty shadows across fields dotted with wildflowers and ancient stone walls. Olivia didn't remember falling asleep, but when she woke, Blaze was waiting just outside the tack room, his breath fogging in the crisp air. There was something different about him, less tension in the set of his shoulders, a hint of curiosity in his eyes. Olivia smiled, rubbing his nose before heading inside to gather her gear. She checked her backpack again. Phone, power bank, flashlight, the small but sharp wire cutters, a folded trail map, and the borrowed drone tucked carefully in its case. On the kitchen table, her father's old Swiss Army knife glinted beside a battered thermos. Olivia poured strong black coffee, forcing down a piece of toast, then left a note for Annie. "Gone to check out a lead. We'll call if I'm late, don't worry." She hesitated by the front door, glancing back at the silent farmhouse. The weight of responsibility pressed against her chest, almost making her turn back. No, she told herself. If I don't act now, Storm and the others might be lost forever. Outside, the morning was cold and bright. Olivia saddled Blaze, her movements steady and practiced now, and secured her backpack. The chestnut gelding danced a little, snorting at the unfamiliar pack, but settled as she murmured softly to him. "We're on a quest, you and me. Ready?" She swung into the saddle, gave him a reassuring pat, and guided him down the muddy lane away from Greenhaven. The countryside unfurled before them in rolling waves of green and gold. Olivia took the back trails, keeping Blaze at a brisk walk, careful to avoid main roads where prying eyes might notice. Fields gave way to tangled woodland, the scent of earth and bluebells rising as they ducked beneath arching boughs. The path grew slick with last night's rain, and more than once Blaze's hooves slipped in the mud. Olivia leaned forward, urging him on, grateful for his strength and sure-footedness. They crossed a shallow stream, water splashing up Blaze's legs. Olivia paused on the far bank to check her phone. The map glowed on the screen, her blue dot inching steadily closer to the abandoned dairy barn. She sent a quick message to Arthur, updating him on her location, and stowed the phone. A robin sang somewhere above, and for a moment, the beauty of the place filled her with both hope and dread. If she failed, if something happened to Blaze or herself, would anyone even know where to look? By late morning, Olivia reached the edge of a wide meadow bordered by a thicket of hawthorn. She halted Blaze, scanning the horizon. A narrow footpath snaked along the hedgerow. According to her notes, it was the most direct route to the barn, but also the most exposed. Olivia chewed her lip, considering her options, when a voice startled her from behind. "You lost, miss?" She spun, heart hammering, to see an old farmer with a weathered face and a tweed cap standing on the path behind her. He leaned on a battered walking stick, his eyes sharp but kind. Blaze whickered nervously, but didn't shy. No, not lost," Olivia managed, then hesitated. Should she lie? Trust a stranger? Something about the man's steady gaze made her choose honesty. "I'm looking for some missing horses. My family's farm was robbed a few nights back. I think they're being kept near here." The farmer's expression softened. "You must be Henry's girl. Heard what happened. Terrible business." He gestured for her to follow. "Come on. I know a shortcut. Less chance of anyone spotting you from the main road. Name's Mr. Bailey." Relief washed through Olivia. She thanked him, leading Blaze after the farmer as he guided her through a maze of overgrown footpaths and across a rickety wooden bridge. Mr. Bailey chatted quietly as they walked, sharing stories of horse thieves in the old days and how the land had changed. "You got guts coming out here by yourself," he said as they neared the edge of the woods. "Not everyone would. Good luck to you, miss." He pointed her toward a narrow lane that twisted through a stand of birch trees. Olivia thanked him again, and he nodded, tipping his cap before disappearing into the fields. The final approach to the barn was the hardest. The ground was thick with mud, chewed up by truck tires and hooves. The air was heavy with the smell of damp earth and something sharper, fear, maybe, or adrenaline. Olivia dismounted, leading Blaze behind a screen of brambles. She could see the barn now, half hidden by tangled undergrowth, its slate roof sagging, doors chained shut. She checked her phone for a signal, 2 bars. Not great, but better than nothing. Olivia set up the drone, heart racing as she watched the live video feed flicker to life. The camera showed the barn from above, its yard littered with rusting farm equipment, and, her breath caught, horses, 3 of them, penned in a makeshift corral at the back. One, she was almost certain, was Storm. A white van sat parked by the barn's side door, and as the drone hovered, 2 figures emerged, both men, one short and burly, the other tall and thin, their faces turned away from the camera. Olivia's stomach twisted. This is real. They're here. She recorded everything, faces, vehicles, license plate numbers, saving the files to her phone and sending them to Arthur as backup. She considered her next move, weighing fear against urgency. She knew she should call the police, but what if the thieves moved the horses again? What if they vanished before help arrived? Blaze shifted beside her, picking up on her anxiety. She stroked his neck, grounding herself. "We're going to need a plan," she whispered. She watched the barn for nearly an hour, noting when the men left the yard, when they returned, when the horses were checked and fed. It became clear there was a window, a brief one, in the late afternoon when both men disappeared inside for a smoke and a meal, leaving the corral unguarded. That would be her chance. Olivia crept closer, moving slowly along the tree line. She found a gap in the brush that offered a clear view of the barn's side door and the makeshift pen. Her mind raced. How would she cut the horses loose? How would she get Storm out without alerting the thieves? Blaze pressed against her side, steady and unflinching. She realized he would be her greatest asset, his strength, his courage, the trust they had built. She pulled out her phone and typed a message to Annie. "Found them. We'll try to get them out tonight. Call police if I'm not back by midnight." She paused, then added, "Tell Dad I love him." As the sun dipped lower, Olivia crawled back to where Blaze waited, hidden among the trees. She fed him the last of her apples, whispering her plan into his ear, as if he could understand every word. The bond between them felt unbreakable now, a partnership forged in fear and hope. The hours crawled by. Olivia watched the barn, rehearsing every step, every movement. She pictured herself slipping through the shadows, wire cutters ready, Storm's eyes meeting hers in the darkness. She pictured Blaze, waiting at the edge of the trees, ready to run if anything went wrong. Finally, as dusk settled over the fields, Olivia rose and checked her gear one last time. The world was hushed, every sound magnified, the creak of a door, the distant call of a fox, her own pounding heart. She stroked Blaze's nose. "We're out of time," she said. "Let's bring them home." With one last look at the fading light over the Cotswold hills, Olivia stepped into the shadows, Blaze at her side, and began her most daring rescue yet. Twilight swept across the Cotswolds, transforming the green landscape into a tapestry of blues and deepening shadows. Olivia waited with bated breath in the brambles, every muscle in her body tense and alert. From her hiding place, she watched the white van's headlights flicker on for a moment before the engine died, leaving the barnyard plunged in near darkness. Somewhere inside, men's voices echoed, muffled by the thick barn walls, but Olivia could hear the cadence of their laughter, the scrape of chairs on the concrete floor, the clink of bottles. Blaze stood beside her, completely still except for the twitch of his ears and the gentle puff of his breath in the cooling air. Olivia kept her hand on his withers, drawing comfort from the horse's warmth and solidity. She'd been through so much with him over the past weeks that she almost felt they could communicate without words. Olivia glanced down at her phone, checking the time. Just past 8. According to her careful observations, this was the window when both men retreated indoors, leaving the yard and horses unwatched. She pulled out the drone, fingers trembling, and carefully launched it through a gap in the bushes. The tiny whir of its blades was nearly masked by the breeze rustling through the hedgerow. The drone's live feed appeared on her phone, shaky at first, then sharpening as Olivia guided it in a slow arc around the perimeter. She saw the corral, the white van, and, her breath caught, the cluster of horses penned at the back of the barn. Storm's dappled coat was unmistakable, but Olivia's heart ached to see the fear in his eyes and the wild, restless stamping of his hooves. She guided the drone higher, searching for any sign of other people, but the yard was deserted. Then she hovered the camera at the barn's high windows and angled it downward. Her heart hammered. Inside the main barn, she saw more than just her missing horses. There were at least 6, maybe more, cramped into stalls built from scrap lumber, all of them gaunt, their manes tangled, some with ribs showing through their coats. A surge of anger mixed with adrenaline rushed through Olivia. She snapped photos and videos, saving everything to her phone and the cloud. Evidence, she thought, in case things went wrong. She noticed a gap at the far end of the barn, an old sliding door that looked like it hadn't been properly latched. It opened onto the field and the dense woods beyond. If she could get inside and cut the chains, she could lead the horses straight out through there to safety. Her mind raced, running through the plan again and again, searching for weaknesses. The drone's battery warning beeped. Olivia guided it back, landing it softly in the brush. She checked the barn one more time. No sign of the men outside, just a flickering light from a back window. This was her chance. She pulled the wire cutters from her pack and slipped the small canister of pepper spray into her jacket pocket. Then she unclipped Blaze's lead, whispering into his ear, "Stay here. If anything happens, run home. You hear me? Run." Blaze snorted softly, bumping her shoulder with his nose. Olivia took one last deep breath and crept from the undergrowth, sticking to the shadows as she circled the barn. Her boots squished in the mud, each step slow and silent. The sounds of the night seemed to grow louder. Crickets, the distant hoot of an owl, her own pulse roaring in her ears. She reached the old sliding door. The chain was looped through the handle but held with a simple padlock. Olivia fumbled for the wire cutters, her hands shaking. She glanced over her shoulder, still no sign of the men. In one sharp motion, she snapped the chain. The sound rang louder than she'd expected. She froze, heart pounding, but the laughter inside continued, undisturbed. She eased the door open, slipping inside, The smell hit her first. Sour hay, sweat, the unmistakable scent of fear. Storm was the first to notice her. His ears pricked up, and he nickered softly, recognition flaring in his eyes. Olivia swallowed tears and hurried to him, stroking his nose, murmuring, "I'm here, boy. I'm here." She quickly worked through the makeshift stalls, whispering to each horse, cutting their leads and looping makeshift halters out of old rope she'd found piled in the corner. The horses shied away at first, but Olivia's calm voice and steady hands seemed to reassure them. Then came a jolt. Footsteps thudded on the other side of the barn wall. Olivia's heart leapt into her throat. The voices grew louder. She pressed herself flat against the wall, barely breathing, as the barn door creaked open. Light spilled across the dirt floor. 2 men stepped in, arguing in low voices. Olivia shrank deeper into the shadows. They didn't see her. Their focus instead on the row of stalls nearest the front. "If anyone comes poking around, we'll move them tonight," the shorter man grumbled. "You hear about that farm girl, Olivia? Cops say she's poking her nose in." Olivia's blood turned to ice. They knew her name. She waited until they left, the door banging shut behind them before moving again. She finished freeing the horses, her movements frantic but careful. She led Storm out first, then the others, one by one, their hooves nearly silent on the soft dirt. Outside, Blaze was waiting, alert, ears pinned, ready to run at her command. Olivia led the small herd through the gap in the fence, into the thickest part of the woods. She moved quickly but quietly, keeping to the shadows, guiding the horses as best she could. The night was alive with sounds, branches snapping under hooves, the distant bark of a dog, and far behind, a shout as the thieves realized their animals were gone. She didn't look back. She urged the horses forward, Blaze herding them along, almost as if he understood the urgency. The terrain was rough, the ground uneven, but Olivia's determination was unwavering. They reached a narrow country lane, and Olivia pulled out her phone, hands fumbling as she dialed the emergency number. A calm but urgent voice answered. Olivia explained everything in a rush. Her name, the stolen horses, the evidence, the location. The dispatcher promised help was on the way. Olivia could hear the thieves yelling, crashing through the underbrush, closer than she'd thought. She gripped the canister of pepper spray, ready for a confrontation. But Blaze circled behind her, blocking her from view, stamping and snorting, his size and power suddenly a shield rather than a danger. Olivia felt a surge of gratitude. She'd trusted him, and now he was protecting her. She led the horses onward, using her flashlight to illuminate the road. The herd moved faster now, the sound of pursuit spurring them on. Olivia whispered encouragement to Storm, to the other frightened animals, urging them to keep going. Sirens pierced the night, faint but growing closer. The headlights of police vehicles flashed through the trees, blue and white strobes slicing the darkness. Olivia waved her flashlight in desperate arcs. Relief flooded her when she saw officers emerge, hands raised, voices shouting orders. Within minutes, the thieves were apprehended. Officers hurried to check the horses, radioing for backup and animal rescue units. Olivia collapsed beside Blaze, breathless, mud-streaked, every limb shaking with adrenaline and relief. An officer knelt beside her. "You did something brave tonight, Miss Greenhaven. We'll take it from here." Olivia nodded, tears streaking her face as she hugged Blaze's neck. In that moment, the horrors of the past weeks finally began to loosen their grip. She'd faced her worst fears, and she'd brought her family home. But as she looked around at the battered, frightened horses, Olivia realized her quest wasn't over. The road ahead would be long, a journey of healing, rebuilding, and forgiveness. But for the first time in a long while, hope felt real. Blaze nuzzled her shoulder, and Olivia laughed, shaky and triumphant. "We did it," she whispered, voice trembling with joy and exhaustion. "We really did it." The Cotswolds night had never felt so alive. As the blue and red lights of the police faded in the distance, Olivia gathered the rescued horses beneath the veil of trees along the country lane, her mind still racing from the adrenaline and fear. Storm stood close, nudging her with his soft muzzle, as if to reassure her it was all real, that they were free and together. Blaze stayed vigilant at her side, muscles tensed, scanning every sound in the dark. But Olivia knew this was only the beginning of their escape. They had to get everyone safely back to Greenhaven, and the thieves were not done yet. She checked her phone, barely 10% battery left. She sent Annie a quick message. "Safe, have Storm and others heading back. Cops here, keep gate open." The reply came almost instantly. "Thank God. We're waiting." Olivia exhaled, hope mingling with exhaustion, but forced herself to stay focused. The horses huddled around her, trembling, frightened, but looking to her for guidance. She tied simple halters from rope for the other stolen horses, looping them around Storm's neck, and secured the smallest, a skittish bay mare, with a double knot. Blaze led the way, picking his path carefully through the undergrowth. Olivia followed, coaxing the others, using her body and soft words as a guide. The forest swallowed them up, moonlight filtering through branches, turning everything silver and mysterious. A sudden shout rang out behind them, harsh, angry, and close. Olivia's heart stopped. The thieves, furious at the loss, were crashing through the woods, their flashlights flickering in the darkness. Olivia's breath came in short bursts. She couldn't outrun them with so many horses, and she couldn't risk leading them straight home. "Blaze, Storm, come on," she whispered, urging the herd faster, away from the road and deeper into the maze of old stone fences and wild hedgerows. She scanned for an escape, anything that might buy them time. She spotted a gap in the old dry stone wall and steered the horses through, moving swiftly into an abandoned sheep paddock, grown thick with tall grass and nettles. She crouched beside Blaze, listening. Footsteps pounded closer, the beam of a flashlight arcing over the hedgerow, just missing them by inches. Olivia ducked, pressing herself flat against Blaze's side. The horse stood perfectly still, as if sensing the danger. The other horses trembled, but stayed quiet. Their trust in her, built in the barn, proven on the road, holding fast. The footsteps faded. The thieves were searching, cursing, splitting up to comb the fields. Olivia swallowed, her mind racing. They needed a distraction, something to lure the men away and give the group a chance to escape. She reached for her phone, fumbling through her apps. Then she remembered, the air horn app she'd downloaded for emergencies. She turned the volume all the way up, covered the phone's speaker with her hand, and crept as close to the field's edge as she dared. Holding her breath, she tossed the phone into a patch of nettles away from their hiding place, then triggered the air horn remotely. The shrill, blaring sound cut through the night, loud, sharp, impossible to ignore. The thieves erupted in shouts, racing toward the noise. Olivia seized the moment, hustling the horses out of the paddock and across another stretch of fields, hearts pounding, feet flying over the dew-wet grass. Blaze led the charge, breaking through brambles and low branches, his strength clearing a path. Storm and the other horses followed, fear giving way to hope with every step further from danger. The trek was grueling, down muddy embankments, through shallow brooks, over fences, and through tangled woods. Olivia's hands were raw from the ropes, her legs scratched and burning, but she never slowed. She whispered encouragement to each horse by name, calling out softly in the dark, "You're safe now, almost home. Keep going." As the first hint of dawn colored the eastern sky, Olivia spotted the familiar silhouette of Greenhaven's barn in the distance, its roof rising above the misty fields. Relief surged through her, but she knew they weren't safe yet. She scanned the horizon. No headlights, no shouts, just the gentle chorus of waking birds. But as they neared the last stretch of road, a shadow loomed. One of the thieves had circled around, cutting them off, a grim silhouette blocking their path with a heavy flashlight raised like a club. Olivia stopped, instinctively placing herself between the man and her horses. Fear twisted in her gut, but she refused to let it show. The man advanced, shouting, "You think you can just walk away with my property? Hand over those horses, now!" Blaze stepped forward, his huge form towering in the half-light, ears pinned and eyes blazing. Olivia met the thief's gaze, her voice steady. "They're not your property. Leave us alone." The thief lunged, grabbing for Storm's lead rope. In that split second, Olivia reached into her pocket and pulled out the canister of pepper spray. She squeezed the trigger, a fine mist hitting the man square in the eyes. He screamed, stumbling back, dropping the flashlight and clawing at his face. Blaze reared up, hooves lashing out, not in panic but in warning. The man staggered, blinded, and fell into the ditch by the road. Olivia gathered the horses, pushing them onward, adrenaline burning in her veins. Behind her, another thief's shout echoed, but then a roar split the morning as the Greenhaven tractor barreled down the lane, headlights glaring, Annie at the wheel with two farmhands riding shotgun. The men leaped from the tractor, grabbing the fallen thief and pinning him until the police arrived moments later, sirens wailing. Olivia nearly collapsed with relief as Annie wrapped her in a fierce hug. "You did it," Annie whispered. "You brought them home." They led the horses through the front gate, Blaze and Storm prancing with excitement. The barn lights glowed warm and golden as the herd entered, welcomed by the remaining staff and neighbors who'd come to help. Everyone gathered around Olivia, praising her bravery, hugging her, and gently tending to the rescued animals. As the sun finally rose, washing Greenhaven in gold, Olivia stood with Blaze in the barnyard, her heart pounding with gratitude and disbelief. She had risked everything, her safety, her future, her hope, and had won. The police took the thieves away in handcuffs, thanking Olivia for her evidence and quick thinking. The officers promised that thanks to her bravery and the footage she'd provided, the Gloucestershire horse theft ring would finally be brought to justice. Later, after the adrenaline faded, Olivia found herself alone with Blaze in the quiet of the tack room. She buried her face in his mane, tears streaming down her cheeks. Not just tears of relief, but of pride, exhaustion, and a joy so fierce it left her breathless. "We did it, Blaze," she whispered, voice trembling. "We kept our promise. We brought them home." Blaze nuzzled her shoulder, his eyes soft and trusting. For the first time since the stormy night that changed everything, Olivia felt whole again, stronger, wiser, and never more grateful for the bond between a girl and her horse. The golden light of dawn streamed through the broken windows of Greenhaven's old barn, painting everything in hues of honey and hope. Olivia leaned against Blaze's side, drawing comfort from the horse's steady breath and gentle nudge. The others, their coats still dirty, manes tangled but eyes bright with relief, milled around in their stalls. Storm, finally home, snorted softly and reached his head over the gate to nuzzle Olivia's shoulder. The farm buzzed with activity as neighbors and friends helped calm the returned animals, offering buckets of water, handfuls of sweet hay, and gentle words. Laughter and tears mingled in the cool morning air, but a tension lingered, a shadow that had not yet fully passed. That tension snapped as Annie burst into the barn, her face pale, eyes wide. "Liv, there's more trouble. I just saw a truck, one of the thieves, coming up the lane. They must have got loose, or maybe there's others in the ring." Olivia's heart hammered. The police had arrested 2 of the thieves, but she knew from her research and the online groups that the ring was bigger, more organized than anyone had realized. If any of them were coming back for revenge or to reclaim what they thought was theirs, Greenhaven was still in danger. Without thinking, Olivia snapped into action. "Annie, lock the back gates and call the police. Get everyone inside the house and barn. Don't open for anyone but law enforcement. Now!" Annie nodded, running to rally the helpers, herding the remaining staff and volunteers toward the farmhouse. Olivia moved quickly down the aisle, checking the stalls, securing the doors. She kept her phone in one hand, ready to hit the emergency number again, though her battery flashed at just 4%. Outside, the sound of the approaching truck grew louder, engine snarling, tires spitting gravel. Olivia's mind spun, trying to think 3 steps ahead. She needed to protect the horses first, then herself and the others. She slipped into Storm's stall, grabbing the heavy lead rope and her father's old flashlight. Blaze stood close, almost as if he was waiting for instructions. Suddenly, the barn doors crashed open, and 2 men in dark jackets strode inside, faces hard and eyes blazing with anger. "Where is she?" the taller one barked. "You're gonna regret stealing from us. Those horses are worth a fortune." Olivia's blood turned to ice. She forced herself to stand tall, gripping the lead rope tighter. "This is private property. The police are on their way," she said, voice steady. "Get out now." The men ignored her warning, shoving past a stack of hay bales and stalking toward her. In the cramped aisle, the air was thick with the smells of horses, hay, and fear. One man reached for Blaze's halter, trying to yank the horse from the stall. Blaze jerked away, teeth bared, a deep rumble building in his chest. "Don't touch him!" Olivia yelled, stepping between the man and her horse. The other thief lunged for her arm, but Olivia twisted away, raising the heavy flashlight and swinging it down hard, catching him on the wrist. He cursed, stumbling back. "You little!" He spat, grabbing her shoulder and trying to drag her away from the stalls. Olivia dropped the flashlight, reaching desperately for the canister of pepper spray she'd stuffed in her pocket. The thief knocked it out of her hand, sending it clattering under a feed bucket. But Blaze was already moving. With a shriek, the horse lunged forward, ears flat, eyes wild. He crashed into the aisle, blocking Olivia from the men. The taller thief tried to push past, but Blaze snapped his teeth just inches from the man's face, forcing him to stumble back, cursing. From outside, sirens wailed, a blessed sound. The thieves panicked, one sprinting for the exit, the other grabbing a pitchfork and brandishing it wildly. Olivia ducked into Storm's stall, heart pounding. Blaze, fearless, kicked out at the thief's legs, sending him tumbling into the straw. The barnyard erupted with flashing lights as the police arrived, blue uniforms fanning out to surround the intruders. Annie burst from the house with the rest of the volunteers behind her. "Stay back!" she shouted. "Let the police handle it!" The taller thief tried to escape through the rear doors, but ran straight into a pair of officers. The other tried to hide among the horses, but Blaze kept him pinned, rearing and pawing the ground until the man surrendered, hands shaking. Within minutes, both men were cuffed and led away, heads down, faces streaked with dirt and fear. Olivia's knees went weak as the police chief approached, a look of relief on his weathered face. "You're safe now," he said. "We'll make sure they don't come back. You and your horse saved the day." Olivia managed a tired smile, hugging Blaze's neck as the police questioned witnesses and checked on the frightened animals. Annie brought her a cup of sweet tea, hands shaking. "I thought we'd lost you," Annie whispered. "I've never seen anything like that. Blaze, he was incredible." Olivia stroked Blaze's sweaty coat, her heart full. "He's more than just a horse," she said quietly. "He's family." The hours after the attack passed in a blur. Neighbors arrived with casseroles and strong words of support. The local vet came to examine each rescued horse, patching cuts and treating fevers. Olivia insisted on helping, staying with Blaze and Storm through every checkup, soothing them with gentle hands and quiet murmurs. When her father arrived, still bandaged, moving slowly but upright, Olivia ran into his arms. He pulled her close, his voice thick. "I heard what you did, Liv. Your mom would have been so proud." Olivia blinked back tears, nodding into his shoulder. "I didn't do it alone," she said. "None of us did." As evening fell, Greenhaven glowed with lantern light and laughter. The worst was over. The horses were safe, the thieves in custody, the community united as never before. Olivia sat outside the barn, looking up at the first stars appearing overhead, Blaze resting his great head on her lap. "You saved us, boy," she murmured, voice soft. "You saved all of us." Blaze lifted his head, as if he understood, his eyes reflecting the light of the stars. For the first time since that terrible stormy night, Olivia felt a deep, unshakable peace. No matter what challenges lay ahead, Greenhaven was home, safe, whole, and filled with love. And somewhere in the distance, a nightingale sang, its song drifting over the fields as if to promise. The darkest hour was finally past. The world felt new as sunlight poured over Greenhaven the next morning, casting golden rays through the dewy grass and catching on every raindrop left behind by the night's storms. Olivia stood in the barn aisle, shoulders aching with fatigue, but her spirit lighter than it had been in weeks. Storm munched contentedly in his stall. Blaze rested nearby, and every rescued horse had a clean blanket, fresh water, and a gentle hand to soothe them. The air hummed with the quiet sounds of life returning to normal. The low whicker of horses, the clatter of feed buckets, the soft murmur of neighbors and friends gathered to help. The chaos of the past few days seemed almost like a bad dream. But the bruises on Olivia's arms and the mud on her boots reminded her it was all real. She walked down the aisle, greeting each horse by name, pausing with Storm to run her hand down his neck. He pressed into her, warm and steady. The connection between them was deeper now, as if their ordeal had fused their hearts together. Annie bustled into the barn, cheeks flushed, holding a plate of warm scones. "You have to eat something, Liv," she insisted, her tone more maternal than ever. "You've barely slept, and the whole village is here wanting to thank you." Olivia smiled gratefully, taking a scone and biting in. The sweet, buttery taste filled her with an almost overwhelming gratitude. Food, shelter, family, even if everything else changed, these remained. Outside, a crowd had gathered. Word of Olivia's rescue and the dramatic capture of the thieves had spread fast. The local police had set up a small post at the end of the drive, making sure no one unwanted slipped through. Journalists from the local paper and a few regional news stations lined the lane, snapping photos and calling out questions. Olivia took a deep breath and joined her father on the porch. He was still pale, his arm in a sling, but there was a new brightness in his eyes. He watched the reporters with a mix of pride and exasperation. "Well," he muttered, "you always did know how to draw a crowd, kid." Olivia grinned, but her laughter faded as a group of officers approached. The police chief, a tall man with kind eyes and a clipped accent, tipped his hat. "Miss Greenhaven, we just wanted to thank you. Your courage and your evidence helped crack this ring. There'll be no more horses stolen in this county for a long time." Olivia shook his hand, heat rising to her cheeks. "I just did what anyone would do," she replied quietly. "I couldn't let them win." "Not everyone would have been so brave," the chief answered. "You and your horse, Blaze, was it, saved lives. That's not something people will forget." The words sent a ripple through the crowd. Neighbors came forward, offering hugs, handshakes, and gifts. Homemade pies, tins of cookies, armfuls of flowers. An older woman pressed a worn leather book into Olivia's hands. "For your next chapter," she said, "your mother would be so proud." The horses, too, were showered with affection. The vet, Dr. Simons, checked Storm's wounds, murmuring praise for his resilience. Volunteers from neighboring farms came to groom, feed, and exercise the animals. Greenhaven's fences were mended, its doors rehung, and every broken light was replaced with something brighter. By midday, a new sign hung at the entrance: Greenhaven, Sanctuary, and Hope. Olivia traced her fingers over the painted letters, heart swelling with pride and humility. She knew now that Greenhaven was more than just her family's home. It was a safe haven for anyone or anything needing shelter, strength, and a second chance. Later, Olivia walked with her father around the property. The air was crisp and clear, the land soaked in the scent of wildflowers and rain. Henry was silent at first, but as they reached the old stone fence near the paddocks, he stopped and turned to her, his eyes shining. "I was wrong about you," he said, voice rough. "I thought you needed protecting. I thought you were still my little girl, but you took care of all of us, of Greenhaven, of me." He hesitated, searching for words. "I'm proud of you, Liv, and I know your mom would be too." Olivia's eyes filled, but she managed a shaky smile. "You taught me everything, Dad, about courage and not giving up and doing what's right. I just finally had to do it my way." They embraced, a hug years in the making, and the ache of old arguments, silent dinners, and unspoken words finally eased. Olivia realized that healing wasn't just about wounds or stolen horses. It was about forgiving, letting go, and daring to build something better from what was nearly lost. As the afternoon faded, Olivia returned to the barn for the last check. Blaze stood at the gate, ears pricked, waiting. She walked into his stall, slipping an apple into his mouth. He crunched it contentedly, nudging her for more. "You did good, boy," she whispered. "You were brave when I needed you most." Blaze pressed his head into her chest, and Olivia closed her eyes, feeling the steady beat of his heart against hers. She realized then how much she'd grown, not just as a caretaker, but as a leader, a daughter, a friend. Blaze had changed too. No longer wild and unpredictable, he was a partner, a protector, and in many ways, a symbol of the hope that now filled Greenhaven. That evening, the community gathered for a celebration. Lanterns were strung from the barn rafters, music played, and laughter rang through the night. Olivia stood among her friends and family, feeling a sense of belonging stronger than ever before. When the local reporter asked for a few words, she smiled shyly, her voice ringing clear and sure. "We went through something dark, but we found our way back because we stood together. My family, my friends, this community, and the horses who trusted us. Greenhaven is home again, and it will always be a place of safety, kindness, and second chances." The crowd cheered, and her father lifted a glass. To Olivia, to Greenhaven, and to never giving up. As the stars came out, Olivia danced with Annie in the barnyard, laughter mingling with the night air. She watched Blaze and Storm grazing peacefully nearby, the other rescued horses dozing under the shelter. There would be more challenges ahead. There always were. But Olivia knew she was ready. She had found her strength, her purpose, and her place in the world. And as the fireflies drifted through the darkness, lighting up the night like tiny sparks of hope, Olivia whispered a silent promise to her mother, to herself, and to all those who would one day need Greenhaven. "We're home," she said softly, "and we're never giving up." The weeks that followed the rescue brought a gentle, steady transformation to Greenhaven. The wounds, on horses and humans alike, began to heal. Storm's coat regained its shine as he grazed in the sunlit paddocks, and the other rescued horses grew stronger under the careful hands of volunteers and neighbors. The barn, once battered and bruised, echoed with laughter, the rhythm of hooves, and the gentle lowing of voices that spoke not only of survival, but of hope. For Olivia, every sunrise felt like a gift. She woke before dawn, slipping on her boots and walking the misty grounds in the quiet hour when the world was still. Blaze always waited for her by the gate, his once wild eyes now calm, reflecting the steady trust they'd built. She would run her hand down his strong neck, whispering plans for the day ahead, promising him, promising herself, that they would keep moving forward. One morning, as the first gold touched the tops of the old oaks, Olivia found herself surrounded by new faces. Children from the village, their parents in tow, eager to meet the horses that had become local legends. With Annie's help and advice from her mother's old journals, Olivia began organizing sessions for children and veterans, introducing them to Blaze, teaching them to groom, to ride, to listen. Many of the children were shy at first, some even afraid, but Blaze greeted each visitor with a gentle patience that amazed everyone. "He's changed," said Dr. Simons, the vet, watching as Blaze stood perfectly still while a little girl braided ribbons into his mane. "He's not the horse I remember. You've done something special, Olivia." Olivia smiled, giving Blaze a sugar cube. "He did it himself. I just helped him believe it was possible." Word spread quickly. Parents emailed, teachers called, and soon Greenhaven was filled with laughter and voices again. Kids running through the fields, veterans quietly talking with one another as they learned to guide the horses, elderly neighbors bringing pies and memories to share. What began as a small project grew, as donations poured in through a simple GoFundMe campaign started by Annie and a few grateful parents. Olivia used every dollar to make Greenhaven stronger. She replaced the broken fences, built a new therapy arena with wide doors for wheelchair access, and set up solar panels to power the barn's lights. She invited therapists and riding instructors from around the county to volunteer, and in time, Greenhaven became known as a place of recovery, not only for stolen horses, but for anyone who needed to find themselves again. But for Olivia, the most profound healing was at home. Her relationship with her father, once strained by grief and misunderstanding, deepened and softened. Henry, still adjusting to his battered shoulder, often sat on the porch watching Olivia lead the children or work with Blaze. He had learned to listen, to trust his daughter's instincts, and sometimes, on rare, quiet evenings, he would share memories of Olivia's mother, of her laughter, and her stubborn, unshakable faith. One evening, as the sun melted behind the rolling hills, Olivia sat beside her father, their eyes following Blaze and Storm grazing in the fading light. "You know, Liv," Henry said, his voice rough but gentle, "I spent a long time thinking I had to protect you, that you weren't ready for the world's hard edges. But you're the one who protected us. You made this place something I never could have managed alone. Your mother, she would have been so proud." Olivia squeezed his hand. "I think she's still here somehow," she said. "In the horses, in the laughter, in the way we never gave up." Her father nodded, and together they watched as the stars blinked awake over Greenhaven. Later that week, Olivia was invited to share her story on a local podcast. She sat in the quiet of her kitchen, a mug of tea warming her hands, as she spoke to listeners all across the county and beyond. She told them about the stormy night, the theft, the fear, and the uncertainty that followed. She described Blaze, the angry, unpredictable horse no one else wanted, and how patience, kindness, and determination had given them both a second chance. She talked about community, the neighbors who showed up in the dark, the police who believed her, the children who brought new joy to the farm. She talked about her mother, her father, and what it meant to stand up for what's right, even when you're scared. "I learned," Olivia said, her voice clear and sure, "that hope isn't something that just happens. You build it piece by piece with every brave choice, every act of kindness, every time you don't give up. And when you do, you create a place, not just in the world, but in people's hearts, where anyone can find shelter, even on the darkest nights." The episode went viral, shared by parents, teachers, animal lovers, and old friends. People began visiting Greenhaven from farther and farther away, bringing with them stories of loss and hope, of rescue and recovery. As summer turned to autumn, Greenhaven's story was even featured in a national magazine. Donations and letters poured in from strangers, some just wanting to say thank you, others offering support or seeking advice for their own animals or families in trouble. Olivia replied to every message, inviting them to visit, to join the growing Greenhaven family. But the greatest reward was not in the recognition, nor the financial security. It was in the daily moments, the smile on a child's face as they touched a horse for the first time, the quiet tears of a veteran who found peace after years of struggle, the gentle friendship that grew between horses who had once been rivals in the darkness of a stolen barn. One afternoon, Olivia watched Blaze in a therapy session with a group of children. He stood calm as the smallest boy, one who hadn't spoken a word since arriving, wrapped his arms around Blaze's neck and simply breathed with him. After a long moment, the boy whispered, "Thank you," and Olivia's heart nearly burst with joy. That night, as the house quieted and Greenhaven settled under a velvet sky, Olivia wrote a letter to her mother. She didn't know if it would ever be read, but she wrote anyway, pouring out her gratitude and love. She promised to keep fighting for this land, these horses, and the community they'd built. She promised never to let fear or pain decide who she would be. When she finished, Olivia walked out to the barn one last time. Blaze greeted her with a soft whicker, and together they stood in the stillness, listening to the wind in the rafters, the distant laughter of children, the heartbeat of a home rebuilt stronger than before. Greenhaven had faced its darkest night and found the dawn. Olivia knew that storms would come again, that loss and hardship would return in some form, but she was no longer afraid. She had Blaze at her side, her father's trust, her mother's memory, and a community that believed in second chances. And as she closed the barn door, the world outside bathed in the silver light of the moon. Olivia whispered her promise again, this time for all to hear. We are Greenhaven. We are hope. And we will never, ever give up.